circumstances around us change. We keep making the same mistakes, reliving the same mistakes.
You're watching the Spotlight Network, starring Hollywood's newsman, Logan Crawford.
They now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're taking a gripping look into history, human nature, and survival with a terrific author. His name is Raymond Deptula, and he has penned a powerful book. It is called Damned Yankees. This is not just a war story, it's a deeply human tale of struggle, self-preservation, and finding purpose in an unforgiving world. The author masterfully parallels early American conflict with timeless personal battles we still face today. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Raymond, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It is my pleasure. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration to write Damned Yankees.
Well, since I was 10 years old, I knew I was a writer. I didn't think I was going to be a writer. I just knew instinctively that I was a writer. And the next step was, what to write about. So I waited until I felt like I had something to write about. And I did certain things, and I had a career in the Navy, and I found myself at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, a year-long master's program, basically studying the national security. And part and parcel of that was a elective I took that was on the Revolutionary War. And the premise of the elective from the professor, who was also a retired military Marine Corps officer, was that those who fight our nation's wars are typically those who can least avoid doing so. And I thought that fascinated me. And that's a timeless concept. It was definitely true during the Revolution, the American Revolution. It's true today. It's always been true. And it dawned on me that finally I'm going to start doing what I always knew I was when I was 10 years old. And that's what prompted me to write this book.
Well, we're glad you did, because it is such an insightful book. The book touches on political dysfunction in early America. How do you see those parallels to today?
I think if you look at any period of history, whether it's our history or anybody's history, you have political dysfunction. Political dysfunction is part and parcel of the human experience. I mean, we're very polarized at the moment in our society, but we're designed to be like that. But we're no more polarized than we were during the late 18th century and before that. And we've always been a polarized people. We've always been a politically dysfunctional people. We're always going to be that way. It's just that how do we work through those concepts to get to the next step. It's never going away.
Absolutely. You touched on this before, but you said war so often falls on the shoulders of those least able to avoid it. Is that hearkening back to what Reagan said, you have to pray for peace, but prepare for war?
Yes and no. I mean, typically, if you look at who shows up to fight, you take a look at the Vietnam War, for instance, which is very similar in some ways to the American Revolution, and who actually shows up on a battlefield. It's typically not those who have an excuse to get out of it. It's mainly people that don't have a choice in life, and they need something to do, or they get drafted, or they just don't have another place to go and they can't get out of doing it. And that's what I was getting about, is that the people typically that are on the pointy end of the spear, and they don't have a real sense of why they're there, but they're there because they don't have much of a choice of being anywhere else.
Absolutely. Jack Halliday is such an intriguing character in your book. Tell us about him, how you created him. Is he based on anybody you know? Tell us a little bit more about Jack.
I kind of stole his name and maybe his basic qualities from a friend of mine that I admired greatly for just his quiet persistence in life. And I kind of, he's not anybody really after that that's a particular person, but he's kind of an amalgamation of the kind of people that I saw over and over and over again in my own military career. Just people that are hardworking, mean well, show up, and they don't. Again, maybe they don't have any other place to go, but they find a home in the military, and they thrive there. Um, and that's kind of what I wanted to portray, that he's kind of an everyman. Um, he's not the smartest, he's not the best looking, but he shows up and he has certain leadership qualities about him, and he has a moral compass.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Was there a portion of or a particular moment in history that you found most compelling for the story when you were doing your research?
I actually found probably the the lead up to the whole conflict, because I think that as Americans, we we tend to know sort of the basics of what happened. We know the Declaration of Independence, but we don't really know much of what happened before that. And there were 7 generations of colonists that led up to that point. And what I found fascinating, what I really couldn't incorporate into the book. I have one chapter where I kind of do a lead up, from the pilgrims to to Boston in 1774, and how that happened. But that whole period where we're just colonists that are over here, trying to make a living, and we're English citizens, and then all of a sudden we decide we have a beef with our own government. Our own government is abusing us, and how that happened, and how we came to that conclusion, and how the British government came to the conclusion that they had to do what that they did after having won um, the French and Indian War, 10 years earlier in a grand fashion, and how they got it all so wrong, uh, up to that point. And that's the part that fascinated me the most. But my story takes place kind of after that period. And
Yeah.
one of the things in our history was a war called King Philip's War, where 10% of New England was wiped away by the Native Americans, who all of a sudden had a problem with us. They saw that we were encroaching a little bit too much on taking advantage of them, and that was probably the seminal moment of our existence. Not necessarily the French and Indian War, not necessarily even the Revolutionary War, but that resilience to stick around and thrive after that. I think those kind of events were fascinated me.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you envisioned Damned Yankees as a film or a TV series?
Well, I have. I'm not sure anybody else has, but I certainly have, and I'd love to go down that road.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, well, I think it's got interesting conflicts, interesting characters, interesting scenarios. So I think it would be a terrific television series. I think it's almost too much for a film. You actually need to ferret it out more in a series. But I think it'd be wonderful. So, Hollywood, if you're listening, here is a great book that is ready to be
Yeah.
made into a TV series.
Maybe you can put in a word for me. You're closer to those guys than I am.
Well, I gave you a one shout out now, but we'll see what happens as we go along. If you could sum up Damned Yankees in a sentence or a paragraph, what would it be?
Um, First of all, human nature is timeless, and we're not going to change. Uh, we don't change. Circumstances around us change. We keep making the same mistakes, reliving the same mistakes, and there's always people, good people that show up that push through those mistakes, even though they don't understand what is driving their lives. So at the end of the story, Damn Yankees, about a young man who's just trying to survive in
Yeah,
a tumultuous world.
absolutely. As we all are in many ways.
Yes.
What's next for you as a writer?
Well, my main goal right now is to kind of get more traction with this book. I think people that have read it have really liked it, and it's just getting the word out. I don't think enough people know about it, so that's number one. I do have an idea for another book. I'm not a historian, even though this is historical fiction. I don't consider myself a historian, although I like history. But my next book, I have an idea about a priest. It's more of a religious tone. And as I started writing this book, I felt more of a religious pull as I got into the back end of the book. And so I'd kind of like to go with that theme because the next thing that really fascinates me is how we treat religion. And I have a
Yeah.
story about a priest in my head that I'm going to. That's my next project.
Wonderful, wonderful. That sounds terrific. Priests are often maligned. They do great work. I was educated by priests from, grammar school through college, and they are to be respected and revered for their faith and also for their great intellect as well. In
Yes.
most cases, yeah, without a
Yeah.
doubt. This book is terrific that we're talking about today, folks. It is called Damned Yankees. It's not just a war story. It's a deeply human tale of struggle, self-preservation, and finding purpose in an unforgiving world. Raymond, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Logan.
I appreciate your time, your wit, your wisdom, and your insight. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.